Hello and welcome to the Open3D Engine YouTube channel. I'm Damarjian, a technical trainer with the AWS Game Tech team. In this video, we'll explore the O3DE editor and its menu structure. Now, one last point before we begin, and this is in respect to the open source nature of O3DE. The Open3D Engine community is constantly updating the engine with new features and updates. So check back often for more O3D related content. Enjoy the video. The O3DE editor is your primary workspace for designing, creating, and deploying your projects. Now, if you remember from the creating projects using command line videos, we use this command line to start our editor. We're going to go ahead and run this command again. If this is your first time running the editor, you may have to wait for Asset Processor to finish processing all critical assets before the editor loads. When O3DE editor launches, you're given the option to create a new level or load an existing level. If you're using one of the example O3DE projects, you'll find example levels in the levels directory of the project. If you're working with a new project, you must create a new level. The default layout of O3DE editor contains the most commonly used tools and configuration, similar to other content creation applications. The core workflow of O3DE is to create and place entities in a level. You can customize the layout through drag and drop, and save to a custom layout through the Layouts option in the View menu of the main menu bar. Drag the separator bars between panes to resize the pane. Drag the title bar of a pane to tear off the pane. Pane can be dropped anywhere in the layout or dropped outside of the O3DE editor as its own window. To restore the default layout, select Default Layout from the Layouts option in the View menu of the main menu bar. Right-click in Perspective to open the context menu to create entities and prefabs. Prefabs are reusable assets that contain multiple entities. The Entity Outliner displays a list of entities and prefabs in the current level. Right-click in the Entity Outliner to open up the context menu to create entity prefabs. Much of the functionality of the Entity Outliner context menu is shared with the Perspective context menu. The Entity Outliner context menu also has an option to find selected entities and prefabs in the Perspective view, organize the list in the Entity Outliner, and find prefabs in the Asset Browser. The Entity Inspector displays the components of the currently selected entity. At the top of the Entity Inspector is a field for the entity name and an Add Component button. The Add Component button opens a list of components, sorted by the type, that can be added to the entity. Each component has its own set of properties that are displayed in the Entity Inspector. All entities contain a transform component that sets the position, rotation, and scale of the entity in the level. The Asset Browser browses your project's on-disk assets. Assets such as meshes, animations, and textures are created in third-party applications. Assets such as materials, scripts, and prefabs are created within the O3DE editor. The assets that you create are stored in your project's directory. You can also browse different assets that are included within O3DE, as well as assets that are included with gems that have been added to your project. The left pane of the Asset Browser displays a directory structure that you can browse for available assets. When an asset is selected, the preview pane on the right displays a thumbnail preview and information about the asset if available. The Editor console shows command and processes output from O3DE editor and your project. When you load a level, for example, the console displays messages about your assets and configuration files as they load, and might display warnings and errors if issues are encountered. You can enter console commands such as setting console variables in the entry field at the bottom of the console. Click the X button in the lower left of the Editor console to open the Console Variables editor, which provides a simple interface for setting console variables. The toolbar provides easy access to various editor tools and features. The toolbar is docked at the top of the editor by default, but you can also dock it vertically on the edges of the editor. To customize the toolbar, right-click anywhere on the toolbar and select Customize from the context menu. You can choose what toolbars, views, or modes to include. O3DE's interaction model will be familiar to anyone who's played a first-person PC game, with a few minor tweaks and additions. Movement is handled by keyboard input, and view is handled by pointer device input such as a mouse. The movement keys are W to move forward, S to move backward, A to move left, D to move right, E to move up, Z to focus on a specific selection. You can right mouse and drag to rotate the view. This is also known as mouse look in most games. If you scroll the mouse wheel in and out, you can zoom the view. If you middle mouse and drag, you can pan the view. If you click the left mouse on an object, you'll select the entity. If you left mouse plus drag, you can area select entities. If you felt like the movement within the editor was a little bit too fast or too slow, or you might prefer that your editor's camera controls behave like a flight simulator, you can adjust the default editor camera control behaviors by setting the movement properties in the Global Preferences editor. Choose Global Preferences from the Editor Settings group in the Edit menu. Select Camera. Here you can either invert the mouse axis and adjust the movement speed of the editor camera. When you have your movement preferences set to your liking, you might find at times that your editor camera movement is too fast or too slow in certain situations. You can adjust the movement speed in the Perspective toolbar at the top of the Perspective pane. In this video, we explored the O3DE editor. Stay tuned for future videos where we'll discuss more O3D related content. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next video.